Wait. Okay.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Hourlings podcast project. My name's Martin Wilsey and I'm your host. Tonight, Dave is going to be driving the bus though. Dave, take it away.
All right. Tonight's topic is zombies. Who doesn't like zombies? The question is, why do we like zombie stories? So that's the first thing I'm going to throw to our group, right? What's the appeal of zombie stories? Why do we care about them?
I would say, so I'm going to start and say I don't really like zombie stories that much personally, but observing audiences, I would say that one of the appeals of zombie stories is that they are so classic horror, just as far as the human psyche goes. I know that if you were to take monsterology classes or like the origin of fear, it would all come back to what creature looks human but is not or doesn't act it or is a twisted, corrupt version of human. Those monsters tend to be more scary than the ones that have 8 eyes and are furry and with lots of arms and stuff, because we see some of ourselves reflected in them. And so that personal that piercing jab of, oh, that used to be Uncle Mike, or whatever, it lends itself to a particularly powerful genre of horror. So I think if you like horror, zombies are the most you can go. They're the most horror.
Well, I think there's that. And then there's, how do you kill what's already dead? I mean, that is something that is a how do you kill it? I mean, that's what makes it scary.
We're going to talk about types a little bit more later on.
Well, I think there's actually a lot of appeal for zombie stories. For me, personally, as a reader, or like a movie viewer or whatever, as a reader, I like zombie apocalypse stories because they're about survival. I like the survival aspects, living by your wits. I find that very, very, very interesting. It also kind of has this intrigue associated with living with no rules. Who would you actually be if there were no rules? Because I know I, for one, would love to shoot assholes in the face. I got a list. If the zombie apocalypse happens, there are some people that are gonna get one. I'm telling you. So I think that there is a big appeal for that. That you can shoot zombies and not feel guilty about it. In fact, you're doing them a favor by plugging one in the face.
Right. I'm going to be happy that I'm your friend there, Marty. I'm always going to stand your good side.
Very, very satisfying.
There is that.
Plus, the fact that, there's people that love guns, there's people that love swords, there's people that love knives, and it is just another kind of cans of whoop ass that people can open. And there's people and really enjoy that.
Fake and
I think that it marries other fear factors as well, like disease, the fact that you can fall victim to it, fall prey to it, and death itself. Corpses.
Well, not only being dying, but also becoming the enemy.
Right. The whole inversion of humanity. Yeah.
And your fallen soldiers become the enemy's soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of a horror aspect to it too. There's also the black and white aspect. There's no gray. There's no shades of gray when it comes to zombies.
Yeah.
They're trying to kill you. They're trying to eat you. You can shoot them with impunity.
Well, I will push back on that and say one of my favorite zombie stories is Warm Bodies, which was a book turned movie. And it was a romance, and it had a lot of humor in it, but it didn't shy away from the gore or the horror as well. So it was a really interesting mix of horror and romance.
Okay.
And there was areas of gray in that where the zombies were sort of, you know, exploring their humanity. And
And that's just about the only one I've seen, and certainly the only real rom-com zombie film I've seen. Although Zombieland has a few aspects of that.
I thought it was well done, honestly.
Yeah, another great one is Shaun of the Dead. That was way fun.
Dawn of the Dead. Oh yeah,
It's
that's
really
hilarious.
interesting how you could mix, you know, graphic horror with, you know,
Just
laugh out
guys
loud humor.
goofing around. Yeah.
That is actually a really interesting and challenging aspect of some zombie apocalypse stories. When it's done well, you cannot beat it. It's really really fun when it's done right.
Yeah.
Something else that I think lends itself to the general appeal of zombie stories is the everyday aspect. What if a disaster really happened? You know, who would really survive? Is it really always going to be that ex-SEAL with all the guns in his house? Or is it going to be the soccer mom who's just trying to take care of her kids?
Right.
Or is it going to be the nerd who knows how to come up with some good rules for how to survive, right? How would you do if there was a zombie apocalypse and everybody was turning into, you know, man-eating horrors, right? There's kind of that aspect of it as well. And that's the part I really appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how the nerd sort of turns ordinary items into deadly weapons, and how the soccer mom says, "My minivan can crush you."
Yeah, that's a really great aspect of it. And in fact, in some stories that I've read, some of my favorite scenes are they're sitting around, you know, the fire at night, chatting. What were you before this all happened? Oh, I was an accountant, or, you know, I was a police officer. And, you know, there's always that guy that says, oh, when the zombie apocalypse hit, that was the best day of my life. And then there's the other, you know, horribly PTSD soaked, you know, person that's just, you know, horrified because they had to, you know, kill their own family. And so the character depth and breadth that you can have in a zombie apocalypse story is really good.
But there's also a danger there, because you have to, you know, the zombie by itself becomes uninteresting after a while. Did you guys hear that?
No, I didn't hear it. What did you say?
Killing zombies can become uninteresting after a while. And what sticks in the zombie story is the character interactions.
Yeah.
Zombies can get repetitive.
Like,
and I agree. I prefer zombie stories where the zombies are more of a feature of the environment that the characters live in, rather than directly being actors on the plot.
So they're like dangerous animals, and
Right.
the challenge for the heroes is how, you know, coming up with the strategies to survive, coming up with the necessary weapons or gear, coming up with the necessary plan as a team, maybe, to survive, right? But if it's done right, it's all about the characters, and the zombies are the threat that they're dealing with. But it's almost like
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe I think I am in the minority of people who writers who write fantasy who haven't written a zombie story. I've never written a zombie story. I've written demons that, you know, maybe have humanoid features, but definitely not canon zombies. And so I am in the minority of those who just don't really enjoy. I don't read or watch zombie stories, and I don't have like a very intelligent philosophical reason why I don't drive with it. I think for me, it's almost it's too macabre. It's too scary. I don't enjoy dealing with corpses as characters. And I feel like I have so much other things I can explore as a storyteller. So I just don't, I pass up on it. And I wonder if that offends anybody here that's a big fan.
Well, and this probably brings us to the second topic, which is types of zombie stories. So I don't think all zombies are necessarily Walking Dead or supernatural based. In fact,
Okay.
I think they probably divide into a bunch of different categories, but one of the divisions is supernatural versus science based.
Well, then maybe I would surprise myself once you identify these classifications. Maybe there are some zombies that I do like to write and read in.
Yeah. Although I haven't looked at classic horror, so I don't have at the tip of my tongue a good example of a supernatural zombie flick. So if somebody else does, that would be awesome to point out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, as you go farther and farther back in the literature, it's sort of and yeah, thing, but in literature, zombies sort of merge with Nosferatu and the vampires. Go back far enough, they're almost the same thing. The walking undead is sucking blood.
I think the zombies came more from the voodoo mythos.
Well, as I said, there are people that that was going on, that people were attributing that to zombieism, but in the literature, as in fiction, it sort of evolved in that direction, and it's a convergent thing. I'll give you that. It's a convergent thing that it came there and there.
I knew
Well, one of the really common things that happens in a lot of zombie stories is you never find out how all this happened.
Yeah.
That's common.
That is absolutely not a requirement. Now, some authors go to great pains to talk about the virus, and it was weaponized and got out of control and stuff like that, or how exactly it happened, and then maybe the protagonist is trying to find the cure or something like that.
I mean, zombies can be scientific. Like 28 Days Later, I think, had a veneer of science to it, even though these were fast zombies. These are not your ordinary Walking Dead, Night of the Living Dead zombies that are slogging around. These are like boom, and then the zombies there.
Yeah, well, some good examples were a good example of a really scientifically based one where the author did explain where and how it happened was Shaun and Maguire with their Newsflesh trilogy.
Yeah.
A number of the stories were Hugo nominated. That was the confluence of two viruses that were created for medical treatment purposes that did bad things together when they get out in the wild. The other one is John Ringo's Black Tide, where it was a terrorist act. They know that it was a terrorist act. It's just they don't know who did it. And that's pretty common. It's becoming more common that a lot of writers think that if there was a zombie virus, it would be something that was man-made. So that's solidly in the scientific realm. I think I've also seen at least some television episodes of other series where somebody used voodoo to control a dead person to make them do bad things to the protagonist. I don't think I've seen that as a movie, but horror is not usually my genre.
Right. But of course, let's be clear that voodoo does exist, that people zombify, but it's more like you're still alive, you're brain dead. That is real. What we're talking about is the fantasy zombies.
Well, and there's other stories where the zombies are simply actual living humans that have like a very virulent version of rabies. And that has driven them insane and spiked their adrenaline and their aggressive behavior, and to the point where they don't know things. And the brain, that's actually possible in your brain. And
rabies is quite a bugger. Rabies hydrophobia, as we all know, hypersexualization.
So, but all zombies, you drop them by shooting them in the head.
But I will say that
based ones, the zombies are not undead; they're infected.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's a lot of zombie literature and stuff where it's like a second death, where the circulatory system stops. They no longer need their internal organs or whatever. And so you can get, a severed head that still remains alive, kind of thing.
Right.
The
Right.
Walking Dead has something like that where they you turn into a zombie after you die.
Mm.
So that it is literally The Walking Dead. And I guess that's supernatural. They've really never explained it. It's just how it works.
They actually did explain it in episodes that when they went to the CDC, they actually found a scientist that explained that it was a virus and how it actually made the brain awaken, but only parts of it, and how
I vaguely remember that.
yeah. So now that's yet another kind of trope with zombie stories, with the scientists at the CDC solving the issue, but it turns out they can't, and they're the ones that usually get bit and don't tell anybody. And
So that's one thing I like about zombie films, especially, and sometimes zombie books. Where sometimes I've seen plots that exist only because people do stupid things, and I'm not really interested in characters that do one stupid thing after another, after another, after another.
Right. Well, I mean, and zombies, again, they come in many different shapes and sizes. Some of them, are virus. Some of them, cannibalism. Cannibalism is another form or another, taboo that creates the zombie. In fact, in historical zombies, it's like Pride and Prejudice zombies, or the story that I wrote, the Romans versus zombies. I mean, sometimes just putting characters that have no idea what zombies are, have never seen them before, and have none of the technologies that we have today can make some of the most engaging zombie stories, because you're not taking people that have lost something. You're taking people that never had something to begin with.
That's actually an interesting thing that you have to decide in your story. In The Walking Dead, according to the author, Richard Kirkman, I can't remember first. The Walking Dead universe is, nobody had a tradition or a literature about zombies, so nobody knew what to do when that happened. Whereas something like Black Tide Rising, people were like, really? This is zombies? You're saying this is real? Right? And they got a lot of interesting byplay in the story about that.
Maybe that's why I like Warm Bodies, because it doesn't really take itself terribly seriously, and there's a lot of kind of slapstick humor involved in it.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of the humor aspect, but I will say that the Romans versus zombies was supposed to be horror, and I hope it came off as horror, because man, when they're coming after you at night and all you've got is your sword and your iron armor.
Well, there's another interesting aspect. I've read a metric ton of zombie stories and books and movies. Is I call it zombie tourism. Everybody loves a zombie apocalypse story that takes place somewhere they're familiar with. And the movie 28 Days Later takes place in London, and it was actually shot there, and it looked like a zombie apocalypse had happened. And granted, they actually digitized and used CGI for a lot of the scenes and stuff like that. But a couple of the zombie apocalypse stories that I wrote take place in real places. And I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people going, hey, I've been to that restaurant. Or, oh man, I walked over that bridge. And so I find that to be really surprising outcome from stories that I've written.
Right.
Yeah, that is an appeal. It's kind of like the video game series Fallout, that that's a post-apocalyptic, and it doesn't have quite zombies, but has zombie-like monsters in it. Radioactive, whatever, and they move locations. They've done one in DC, they've done one in Vegas. That is appealing.
Yeah, but that's something in literature that you generally want to do anyway. I mean, set your place, and comes alive in zombie stories when you're going through the city and saying, oh no, this is this, and oh, they've gone to Basha's where I used to eat my shawarma and all that kind of stuff.
Well, 28 Days was London. Train to Busan was pretty good. Korean
Oh,
was
that was scary. That was wicked scary, that one.
There's a sequel I haven't seen yet. There's also World War Z, which had
Yes.
some problems in the movie. I think the book is actually much better. But it definitely took you on a tour of a bunch of places around the world.
Yeah, World War Z was a good example of fast zombies. And they were actually undead zombies. People died and then came back. And they were quite durable. How you could machine gun them unless you took their head off or whatever, they would still be coming and piling up on the wall to get in and stuff. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that was a scary part.
Yeah,
They were safe on the third floor until they dogpile and reached the third.
Oh yeah, using their body like the famous Masada thing, that Romans piled up things, but with zombies, piling up zombies to climb up. Oh, so scary.
But I really think I like Zombieland a lot when it comes to zombie films, because it was really a character-driven plot. Some of the characters made some mistakes, but they were organic to the characters, and the zombies were a threat, but the people in some ways were more of a threat than the zombies. And
yeah, that's another common theme in zombie apocalypse stories. It turns out once they know how to deal with them, zombies are like wild animals and they can be avoided or dealt with appropriately. But dealing with people, is very problematic because, there's always that biker gang that survives and takes over the enclave and all that kind of stuff, which can be very fun.
Right. Other types, I think we've talked about supernatural versus scientific. We've talked about fast versus slow. Slow would be the so-called shamblers. You can have both. Maybe the fast ones are new or well-fed, and the shamblers are
fresh.
Are not
fresh versus desiccated.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen. Well, that's not really zombies.
Let me just interject and say anything that's fast is scarier, in my opinion. Fast is scary.
Well, quantity has a fear factor all of its own.
Yes, a shambling horde.
Oh yeah, like Night of the Living Dead.
That never has to rest.
Mm-hmm.
That's really scary. As they're being overrun.
Absolutely.
It's also
Living Dead did that one.
Different stories or movies will have different rules for the zombies. So, for instance, it's possible in John Ringo's series, the zombies are much less dangerous in the cold, in the deep cold of winter. Their metabolisms are down. It's a great time to hunt them. They're much more active in the summer. Some people have zombies going into like hibernation if there's nothing around, and then they wake up. I mean, what are some other variations you guys have seen?
Oh, let's see. There's the kind of zombies that mutate, like the zombies in Resident Evil. You've seen those movies? They turn into something even worse. That's another one that's scientific based on a virus or a drug combination that they get. What else?
Yeah, I've seen stuff where like they mutate into like zombies themselves are sort of like aggressive by coincidence. Like if you happen to be in their path, then they're gonna eat you. Whereas they'll mutate into something that is like fiercely hunting and fiercely fast, or fiercely something that's very aggressive by nature and not just by happenstance.
Well, I will say one of the cutest things about zombies.
Cutest?
Well, I mean, it's just cute in terms of they're always going after your brains. Brains.
Oh, that's another kind. That's another differentiator. not all zombies go after brains.
Exactly. Some
Sure.
zombies are just after the flesh. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Warm Bodies, I
Although
think,
the
had
Plants
the best
versus Zombies,
reason.
they lend to the brains.
I think Warm Bodies had the best reason for eating brains.
Yeah.
They were essentially trapped in the bodies, and eating brains let them experience some of the memories of whoever they ate.
Right. That was the idea.
They reminded them how to be, remind them what being human was like, because that was very interesting.
Yes,
Now,
that
a question
was
for
interesting.
y'all is, which is the best plant to fight a zombie with? No, 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 no. Sorry.
That's a game, Plants vs. Zombies, right?
Plant versus Zombies. Sorry, I didn't go there.
There's a lot of blank versus zombies out there, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. There is absolutely.
Well, you can do serious stuff with it, and you can also do some pretty
Funny. Yeah.
comedy. You can do
Yeah.
slap. You can just do silly, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a bit more of a mix.
Yeah.
I find
like
it
things like the
interesting.
Black Rising that had humor and zombies.
I find it interesting that some zombie stories are advertised very straightforwardly as a zombie movie, sort of like World War Z, whereas then you have something like I Am Legend, which I don't think was really advertised or presented
No,
very,
it was.
with a strong zombie overtone. It was more about, survival in a general post-apocalyptic sense. So interesting that some variation happens there too.
I Am Legend. It depends on which version you watch.
I was thinking Will Smith.
Yeah, the Will Smith version is not true to the book.
Okay.
As a horror film, the premise basically is that as the only person who's been given a drug that gives him immunity, he is the only person in the world who doesn't get sick. Everybody else becomes this night-dwelling creature. He's preying on them. So in essence, by the end of the book, he has become the vampires of the new human race that live at night and are nocturnal.
But are the night dwellers evil themselves?
The original story is more of a vampire story and not a zombie story.
What were the night
actually,
dwellers?
I've actually read zombie stories that it's the first stage of a vampire's life.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're zombies driven by hunger with no
Which
control
goes back to
whatsoever. And they have to get past that in order to become a vampire. I've read that before.
Yeah, I mean, even in games, you'll see that very often where the zombies are clearly the unintelligent, undead cronies. And then you have very intelligent, cunning, slimy vampires who run them. So I've seen that too. But I'm curious, David, were the night dwellers that the book version of I Am Legend protagonist hunted, were they evil, or was he really just becoming like the evil character himself? Because they were not evil.
That was part of the horror of the book. It was written by Richard Matheson, who's a top writer. He's dead now, but for Twilight Zone type stories and stuff. So that was kind of the point of the book, is the hero that you're following actually becomes the villain, and the bad guys become the new normal, the new humanity. And you realize that at the end, and you're like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I read a great zombie book that was very different. And the funny thing is the title that caught my eye. The title of the book, I had to look it up on my Kindle, is My Life as a White Trash Zombie. And and it's hilarious. And the premise is this woman, she gets bitten, and she becomes a zombie, and she craves brains and gets a job at a mortuary. And has access suddenly to enough to keep her sane. And it's a really interesting premise in the book, because then she rapidly finds out that there's this whole underground trafficking thing with people needing brains because they're actually zombies. It was really a fun book. What's that?
There's a television show that was based on a graphic novel called I, Zombie.
Another
has
great zombie series is written by Mark Tufo. He's got, oh geez, like probably 10 books in the Zombie Fallout series. And it's a magical thing, and the zombies are magical in there, and they're actually created by this master, witch vampire monster boss. And I won't give anything away because it is a really great story, and that's because it's all about the characters in the story, and the zombies are like just the setting of it. And
well,
I enjoy that.
no, I'm just going to say, dude, for mention in literature, dude, we have a certain anthologist that we know who wrote 3 Whispers of the Apoc series. Congratulations, Marty.
Yeah, and I did that just because I wanted to write some zombie apocalypse short stories, and I knew a lot of authors that had zombie apocalypse short stories in their computers. And so I actually put together a couple of anthologies of all zombie apocalypse stories. And as part of that, it seems like, I thought that every science fiction author has written a zombie apocalypse short story, all of them. And if they say that they haven't, like Shay, maybe they're lying. But there's a lot of really bad zombie apocalypse stories too.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that about half of them had.
No, we won't go there.
Well,
But,
just zombies
it's
plus
really
things that we don't
interesting.
mention in the
One
podcast.
facet of zombie apocalypse stories that happens more often than any other genre is a tragic end of the story. That has happened in a lot of
the horror
where the protagonist goes out and gives up his life to save his family or the group or something.
Not a lot of happy endings.
Right.
Very fatalistic.
The odds of you getting a not happy ending in a zombie story is much higher.
I agree.
Well, it depends on how you count it. If the guy sacrifices his life but saves his family, then it's not a happy ending, but it's a heroic ending.
Yeah, a heroic tragedy.
But it's still, zombies can still be horror, and that's one of the standards in horror. You never quite know whether your character is going to survive.
Well, but you take one of the quintessential zombie apocalypse movies, Night of the Living Dead, which I think is like a milestone in zombie cinema. That one, it really kicked the audience in the guts. How that movie ended. I won't give a spoiler because I continue to be shocked by the number of people that have not seen that movie, and they really should. Night of the Living Dead.
Fascinating movie. There's some people who think that's a metaphor for racism. We're not going to go there, but we do recognize that some people do feel that way. But it is a classic movie, no matter what you think about that aspect of it.
I have a closing thought. I don't know if we're there yet, but I have a closing thought.
We have one more. Another aspect is, I think typically was
David, please.
There's at some point the zombies are a manageable threat. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Start over.
All right. At some point, the zombies are a manageable threat. You have the weapons, you have the gear, you have the know-how, and then it's all about rebuilding civilization. So great, you've tossed out the old, you've got the new. What's the new going to look like? Dictatorship? King? Emperor? Democracy?
UBI?
I would say more often than not, just my prediction. I don't know. I guess I'm not as well read as you guys are. But I would not assume that it would be a democracy. I would assume it would be a strong leader or a militocracy. Is that a word? Where it's people that can protect and do it hard and do it, sure, going to be those ones who are leading.
I think from my perspective,
It's
it goes
ripe for
back to
fascism.
tribalism. You
Mhm.
know, the chieftain and the people that follow him.
Well, I mean, I get fascism out of it because think about it. You've got a ready-made sucker class that you can blame for all the problems. It's the zombies that did this, the zombies that did this. And now you can just say, you know, you're going to get zombies and we will save you from the zombies. And boom, you've got a Third Reich.
And I think that's an interesting aspect to me. In John Ringo's series, they actually try to reboot civilization and restore the USA. Other zombie books do things differently, but the whole rebuilding civilization aspect, I think, at some point in your zombie story or your zombie series, you get to that point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's where it really comes down to survival.
Yeah.
You know, then a zombie apocalypse story can turn out to be just a simple metaphor for any kind of societal collapse. And how would you rebuild anything? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
I mean, flood, virus, all kinds of things could do that. And by the way, one cool aspect of zombies, which I'm sure is out there in literature, but man, life does it really well. Zombie ants. And they get that fungus and they just do stupid things because that fungus has done that. Come on, ants are zombies sometimes.
well, in several novels that I've read, they explain the virus and the drive that's instilled in their victims to bite, because biting spreads the virus, and it's how you know, how an organism propagates.
Yeah, that's true.
There's
That's
also
logical.
I've also seen, and Shauna McGuire did this in her Newsflesh trilogy. Anything over 40 pounds and that was a mammal could be turned into a zombie. So while it wasn't a big thing, they're not as common as people. You had things like zombie dogs were probably the worst, and the zombie bears was something we encountered one time.
If you lived in India, zombie elephants.
As somebody who has large dogs, I was horrified.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
But none of those purse dogs.
No, they were
No,
safe.
they're just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could tell Shauna McGuire is a cat lover. Seriously, she did.
Yeah, I actually met her. She loves
Yeah.
Mancoon cats. Am I saying that right? Those really huge, beautiful cats, Mancoons. Is that
Really?
right?
Yeah, they're big cats. They're
Not as big as a liger, but big cats.
well, yeah, but
Yeah, I know.
Can I say my closing comment now?
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's time for closing comments.
Well, David, I mean, you're the moderator. You call it.
I believe we have decided to close. So go ahead, Shay.
Okay. I worked a few years at a fall festival locally in my area, and I worked the daytime where it was hay rides and pumpkins and all of that. And at nighttime, it's for the older kids, the scary, you know, people, actors actually try to scare the kids. It's haunted rides, etc., scary clowns. And I know several people, my good friends, who are quiet and sweet and the most lovely human beings you've ever met. And at night, they're the zombies. They're the actors, and they dress up with all this blood and everything. And they say it's the funnest job they ever had. And so I have such a hard time imagining some of my friends who are just the gentlest, sweetest souls, you know, growling and pouncing on people and just having a great time with it. So if you ever have a chance to be a zombie, if you can return to your humanity shortly after, I encourage you to do so.
I once did a zombie photo shoot, a zombie cosplay photo shoot. That was pretty fun. But I will say this, guys, it's the time of the season for zombies.
You know you're near the end when Jeffrey sings.
That's right.
I will say I've come across a couple other things. There's a zombie fun run, which is basically a running event. You run 10 miles or something, but you have these little flags hanging from your belt, and at different places on the route, zombies will try to run you down and steal one of your flags. And also, there's people around taking photos of you being chased by zombies and stuff. So that's a fun event. The other thing is, last time I was in Florida, pre-pandemic, obviously, there was a place in Florida on International Drive in Orlando that basically had a paintball and zombies. So you and your friends could go and do a paintball against the zombies and see how long you lasted. So it's not just books and movies, it's been incorporated into other things as well.
Yeah, if you go on Google and Google zombie walk, most towns actually host a zombie walk where everybody dresses up like zombies and goes out and does the shambling, and then they drink a lot of beer. So my closing remarks would be, you know, a lot of times people walk into my house and it's like they make comments a lot of times about how my house is decorated just in case of the zombie apocalypse, because I collect swords. I actually have swords like on the walls all over my house. And so if you guys need a sword for the zombie apocalypse, just stop by. I've got way more than I could.
Thank you, sir.
The zombie apocalypse, I'm coming over.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Bring coffee. Bring coffee.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, that is enough structured brains of episode.
Well, this is a writing podcast. So the last thing is, I love. The last thing I'd say is I love zombie stories, but the thing to remember is zombie stories are still about people, not the zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that, and you'll be fine when it comes to writing.
Yeah, and I will
Agreed.
just add to that. Every genre is exactly the same as that.
Yes.
It's always about characters. Doesn't
Even
matter if it's
aliens
sci-fi or
love
romance
characters.
or, you know, zombies.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So cool. I guess we're
Thank
done.
you. Yep, we're done.
Thank you, David, for moderating. And thank all you guys for stopping in and listening. And we will see you next week.